Chapter 1, A Scrooge in Heels. Holly Grant swore under her breath as she navigated through the crowded streets of Evergreen. The small town, nestled in the heart of New England, looked like a scene straight out of a Christmas card. Twinkling lights adorned every storefront, festive wreaths hung on every door, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. To most people, it was magical. To Holly, it was nauseating. She parked her sleek, black sedan in front of the Evergreen Town Hall, grabbed her tablet and planner from the passenger seat, and stepped out into the chilly December air. Her high heels clicked against the cobblestones as she made her way inside, her breath forming small clouds in front of her. Holly was a city girl through and through. She thrived in the hustle and bustle of urban life, where she could blend into the crowd and focus solely on her career. As one of New York City's top event planners, she was known for her impeccable taste and ability to manage high-stress situations with ease. Christmas, however, was a different beast altogether. She entered the town hall, immediately bombarded by the festive chaos. Volunteers buzzed around, setting up decorations, and the sound of Christmas carols played softly in the background. Holly suppressed a groan. She had been hired by the town council to organize the annual Evergreen Christmas Gala, an event that drew visitors from miles around. It was a big deal, and Holly's reputation was on the line. Miss Grant. You're here. A cheerful voice called out. Holly turned to see Mrs. Thompson, the town's elderly and endlessly enthusiastic mayor, approaching with open arms. Holly, please, she corrected, forcing a polite smile. Holly, of course. We're so thrilled to have you. This year's gala is going to be the best one yet, thanks to you. Mrs. Thompson's eyes twinkled with excitement. I appreciate the confidence, Holly replied. I'd like to get started as soon as possible. Can you introduce me to my team? Absolutely. Right this way. Mrs. Thompson led Holly through the hall, pointing out various areas where preparations were underway. Holly made mental notes, already planning how she would streamline the process. They reached the main hall, where a group of people was gathered around a large table, discussing decorations. At the center of the group was a tall man with sandy blonde hair and a warm smile. He wore a plaid shirt and jeans, looking every bit the handsome handyman. And this is Nick Winters, Mrs. Thompson said, gesturing to the man. Nick, this is Holly Grant, our event planner. Nick extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Holly. Holly shook his hand, noting the calluses that marked a man used to physical labor. Likewise, she replied, her tone all business. I understand you'll be helping with the decorations. That's right, Nick said with a grin. I've been in charge of the gala decorations for the past 5 years. I hope you don't mind a little tradition. Holly arched an eyebrow. As long as it aligns with the vision I have for the event, I'm open to suggestions. Nick's smile faltered slightly, but he nodded. Fair enough. Let's get to work, then. The rest of the day was a blur of planning and organizing. Holly quickly established herself as the leader, directing the volunteers and setting strict deadlines. She had no patience for the laid-back, festive attitude that seemed to permeate the town. To her, this was a job, and she intended to do it perfectly. As the sun set and the volunteers began to leave, Holly found herself alone in the hall, reviewing her notes. She looked up to see Nick approaching, carrying a box of ornaments. Long day, huh, he said, setting the box down. You could say that, Holly replied without looking up. There's still a lot to do. Nick leaned against the table, watching her. You know, Christmas isn't just about getting things perfect. It's about the spirit of the season. Holly glanced at him, her expression unreadable. I'm here to create an event that people will remember. The spirit of the season is your job. Nick chuckled softly. Fair enough. But maybe you should try enjoying it a little, too. Holly didn't respond, instead turning back to her notes. Nick watched her for a moment longer before sighing and heading out. As she sat alone in the hall, the twinkling lights casting a warm glow around her, Holly couldn't help but feel a twinge of something she couldn't quite identify. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. She had a job to do, and there was no room for distractions. Not even if those distractions came in the form of a handsome carpenter with a passion for Christmas. Chapter 2, Deck the Halls. The next morning, Holly arrived at the town hall bright and early, determined to keep things on track. She walked in with her tablet in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, ready to tackle the day's tasks. As she stepped inside, she was greeted by the smell of pine and cinnamon once again, this time mingling with the aroma of freshly baked cookies. "Morning, Holly," Mrs. Thompson called cheerfully from across the hall, where she was helping a group of volunteers string popcorn garlands. "Help yourself to some cookies. Mrs. Anderson baked them fresh this morning." Holly managed a polite smile and waved, though she had no intention of indulging in cookies. She had a schedule to keep and calories to avoid. She made her way to the central area where the bulk of the decorations were being organized. Nick was already there, whistling a Christmas tune as he untangled a set of fairy lights. He looked up and flashed her a grin. "Morning, Scrooge." Holly rolled her eyes but couldn't help a small smile. "Morning, Mr. Festive." Nick chuckled. "Ready to deck the halls?" "Always," Holly replied, setting her coffee down and consulting her tablet. "Let's start with the entrance. I want something elegant but festive. Think modern meets traditional." Nick nodded. "Got it. I was thinking we could use some of these vintage ornaments. They're a town favorite." Holly looked at the box he indicated, filled with beautiful but old-fashioned ornaments. "They're lovely, but we need to ensure they fit the overall theme. Let's see how we can incorporate them without overwhelming the modern aesthetic." Nick raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Instead, he picked up an ornament and began brainstorming ways to blend the old with the new. Holly watched him for a moment before turning back to her tablet, making notes on the layout and design. As they worked, Holly found herself gradually relaxing. Nick's easygoing nature and the festive atmosphere began to chip away at her usual guarded demeanor. They moved through the hall, arranging decorations and discussing ideas. Nick's enthusiasm was infectious, and Holly couldn't help but get caught up in the spirit of the season. "How about we hang these garlands along the banisters?" Nick suggested at one point, holding up a string of greenery adorned with red ribbons. Holly studied the garlands and nodded. "That could work. But let's add some fairy lights to give them a bit of sparkle." "Great idea," Nick said, already reaching for the lights. "You know, you're not half bad at this whole Christmas thing." Holly smirked. "Don't get used to it. This is a one-time deal." Nick laughed. "We'll see about that." They continued working together, and as the day wore on, Holly couldn't help but notice how well they complemented each other. Nick's creativity balanced her practicality, and his warmth countered her more reserved nature. She found herself enjoying their banter and appreciating his insights. By late afternoon, the entrance was nearly complete. Holly stepped back to admire their handiwork. The vintage ornaments had been skillfully integrated with modern touches, creating a beautiful and cohesive display. The fairy lights twinkled like stars, casting a warm, inviting glow. "It looks magical," Holly admitted, a hint of wonder in her voice. Nick grinned. "Told you we'd make a great team." Holly turned to him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Maybe Christmas isn't so bad after all." Nick's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Careful, you're starting to sound like one of us." Holly laughed, a genuine, carefree sound that surprised even her. Don't push your luck, Mr. Festive. As they tidied up, Holly realized how much she had enjoyed the day. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of the holiday spirit she had long since buried. And it was all thanks to Nick. Same time tomorrow? Nick asked as they finished up. Holly nodded. Same time. As she left the town hall, Holly felt a warmth in her heart that had nothing to do with the cold December air. Maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. Chapter 3, The Spirit of Giving. Holly arrived at the town hall the next morning to find it bustling with activity. Volunteers were busy hanging decorations, setting up tables, and arranging festive displays. The cheerful hum of Christmas carols filled the air, and the smell of pine and cinnamon was as strong as ever. Holly took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of anticipation. Nick was already there, of course, chatting with a group of volunteers and helping to string up more fairy lights. He looked up and waved as Holly walked in. Morning, Holly. Morning, Nick, she replied, setting her things down and joining him. What's the plan for today? We need to finish decorating the main hall and then start setting up the outdoor area, Nick said. I was thinking we could use some of those vintage lanterns along the pathways. They'll look great lit up at night. Holly nodded, already picturing the warm, inviting glow of the lanterns. That sounds perfect. Let's get started. As they worked, Holly noticed Nick's interactions with the volunteers. He knew everyone by name, and his easygoing nature put people at ease. He had a way of making even the most mundane tasks seem fun, and Holly found herself enjoying the work more than she had expected. Hey, Nick, Holly said during a break, as they sipped on hot cocoa provided by one of the volunteers. How did you get involved with the Christmas gala? Nick smiled, looking thoughtful. It's a family tradition. My parents used to run the event before I took over. They loved Christmas and wanted to make it special for the whole town. After they passed, I felt it was my duty to keep their legacy alive. Holly felt a pang of sympathy. I'm sorry about your parents. Nick shrugged, though his eyes were sad. It's been a few years now. But working on the gala helps me feel close to them. It's my way of giving back to the community and honoring their memory. Holly was touched by his words. That's really admirable, Nick. What about you? Nick asked, turning the conversation to her. Why do you hate Christmas so much? Holly hesitated, unsure how much to share. But there was something about Nick's sincere interest that made her want to open up. I didn't always hate Christmas, she began. When I was a kid, I loved it. But my parents divorced right before Christmas when I was 10. It was a messy, painful time, and the holidays never felt the same after that. I guess I just started associating Christmas with bad memories. Nick reached out and gently squeezed her hand. I'm sorry, Holly. That must have been really tough. Holly nodded, appreciating his understanding. It was. And I guess I just threw myself into my work as a way to cope. It's easier to stay busy and avoid all the holiday stuff. Nick looked at her with compassion. I get that. But maybe this year can be different. Maybe you can create new, better memories. Holly smiled softly, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe. They returned to their work, and as the day went on, Holly found herself thinking about Nick's words. She had spent so many years avoiding Christmas, but maybe it was time to face it head-on and find a way to enjoy it again. As they moved outside to set up the lanterns, Holly and Nick continued to chat, sharing stories and laughing together. Holly felt a warmth growing inside her, not just from the holiday spirit but from the connection she felt with Nick. He had a way of making her feel comfortable, accepted, and even happy. By the time the sun began to set, the lanterns were in place, casting a beautiful glow along the pathways. Holly stood back to admire their work, feeling a sense of accomplishment and contentment. "It looks amazing," she said, turning to Nick. "You were right. The lanterns are perfect." Nick grinned. "Told you so. And you did a great job too, Holly. This is going to be the best gala yet." Holly smiled, feeling a sense of pride and anticipation. "I think you're right." As they packed up for the day, Nick walked Holly to her car. "So, what's next on the agenda?" he asked. "Tomorrow we start on the stage and seating arrangements," Holly replied. "We need to make sure everything is perfect for the performances." Nick nodded. "Sounds good. See you bright and early?" Bright and early, Holly agreed. As she drove home, Holly couldn't help but feel a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt in years. Maybe Nick was right. Maybe this Christmas would be different. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to embrace the spirit of giving and create new, joyful memories. Chapter 4, Winter Wonderland. The next morning, Holly arrived at the town hall to find a flurry of activity already underway. Volunteers were bustling around, setting up the stage and arranging seating. The excitement was palpable, and Holly couldn't help but feel a surge of energy as she stepped inside. Nick greeted her with a warm smile. "Morning, Holly. Ready to turn this place into a winter wonderland?" "Absolutely," Holly replied, returning his smile. "What's the plan for today?" "We're focusing on the stage and seating arrangements," Nick said. "I've got some ideas for creating a cozy, magical atmosphere." Holly nodded, her mind already buzzing with possibilities. "Let's get started." They began by setting up the stage, using a combination of traditional and modern decorations. Holly insisted on keeping things elegant and understated, while Nick added touches of whimsy and charm. They draped the stage with soft white curtains, adorned with twinkling fairy lights, and set up a backdrop of evergreen trees dusted with faux snow. As they worked, Holly couldn't help but notice how well she and Nick complemented each other. They moved seamlessly together, their ideas blending into a harmonious vision. Holly felt a sense of camaraderie and connection that she hadn't experienced in a long time. "How about we add some lanterns along the aisles?" Nick suggested, holding up one of the vintage lanterns they had used the previous day. "It'll create a warm, inviting glow." Holly considered the idea and nodded. "I like it. It'll tie everything together." They placed the lanterns along the aisles, and Holly couldn't help but admire the effect. The soft, flickering light added a magical touch to the already enchanting setting. As they moved on to arranging the seating, Holly and Nick continued to chat, sharing stories and laughter. Holly found herself opening up to Nick more and more, feeling a sense of ease and comfort in his presence. "So, what's your favorite Christmas memory?" Nick asked as they adjusted the final row of chairs. Holly paused, thinking back to her childhood. "It's probably the year my dad built a gingerbread house with me. We spent the whole day baking and decorating, and it was just perfect. It was one of the last happy Christmases we had before everything changed." Nick smiled gently. "That sounds wonderful. Maybe we can make some new happy memories this year." Holly felt a warmth in her chest at his words. "Maybe we can." As the day went on, the town hall transformed into a winter wonderland. The stage was set, the seating was arranged, and the entire hall was filled with the festive spirit. Holly felt a sense of pride and accomplishment, knowing that they had created something truly special. In the late afternoon, Nick suggested they take a break and visit Evergreen's annual Christmas market. Holly hesitated for a moment but then agreed, feeling a strange sense of excitement. The market was a bustling hub of activity, with stalls selling everything from handmade crafts to delicious holiday treats. Holly and Nick wandered through the market, sampling hot cocoa and roasted chestnuts, and admiring the various goods on display. They stopped at a stall selling hand-carved ornaments, and Nick picked up a delicate wooden snowflake. "This would look great on the town hall tree," he said, holding it up for Holly to see. Holly smiled. "It's beautiful. Let's get it." They continued to explore the market, enjoying the festive atmosphere and each other's company. Holly found herself relaxing and truly enjoying the holiday spirit for the first time in years. As the sun began to set, the market lights twinkled like stars, casting a warm glow over the scene. Nick led Holly to a small clearing where a group of children was ice skating on a frozen pond. The laughter and joy were infectious, and Holly couldn't help but smile. "Want to give it a try?" Nick asked, nodding towards the skates for rent. Holly laughed. "I haven't skated in years." "Then it's time to get back on the ice," Nick said with a grin. "Come on, it'll be fun." Holly hesitated but then nodded, feeling a sense of adventure. They rented skates and laced them up, stepping onto the ice. At first, Holly wobbled, her balance shaky, but Nick was there, steadying her with a firm grip. "Just like riding a bike," he said, guiding her across the ice. Holly laughed, feeling the rush of cold air and the exhilaration of gliding across the frozen surface. With Nick's encouragement, she grew more confident, and soon they were skating together, laughing and twirling under the twinkling lights. By the time they left the market, Holly felt a warmth in her heart that had nothing to do with the cold December air. She realized that she was starting to see Christmas in a new light, thanks to Nick and the spirit of Evergreen. As they walked back to the town hall, Nick took Holly's hand in his, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Thanks for coming with me today, Holly." "It was fun." "It was," Holly agreed, her heart fluttering at the touch of his hand. "Thank you for inviting me." They shared a smile, and for the first time in a long time, Holly felt truly happy. Chapter 5, The Christmas Wish. The next morning, Holly arrived at the town hall feeling a sense of excitement she hadn't felt in years. The gala was just days away, and the preparations were nearly complete. The transformation of the hall into a winter wonderland was nothing short of magical, and Holly felt a deep sense of pride in what they had accomplished. Nick was waiting for her by the stage, his usual warm smile lighting up his face. "Morning, Holly. Ready for the final push?" "Absolutely," Holly replied, returning his smile. "Let's make sure everything is perfect." They spent the morning fine-tuning the decorations, ensuring every detail was just right. The volunteers bustled around, adding the final touches, and the atmosphere was buzzing with anticipation. Holly and Nick worked side by side, their movements synchronized, their conversations filled with laughter and camaraderie. As the day wore on, Holly couldn't help but feel a growing sense of connection to Nick. He had a way of making everything seem possible, of bringing out the best in her. She found herself looking forward to their time together, cherishing the moments they shared. In the late afternoon, as they were taking a break, Mrs. Thompson approached them with a box in her hands. "I have something special for you both," she said, her eyes twinkling with excitement. Holly and Nick exchanged curious glances as Mrs. Thompson opened the box to reveal two handmade Christmas ornaments. One was a delicate snowflake, intricately carved and painted, and the other was a heart, adorned with tiny, sparkling gems. "These are for you," Mrs. Thompson said, handing the ornaments to Holly and Nick. "They've been passed down through the town for generations, given to those who've made a significant impact on our Christmas celebrations. You both have certainly earned them this year." Holly felt a lump in her throat as she accepted the snowflake. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. This means a lot." Nick nodded, holding the heart ornament with reverence. "Thank you. We'll treasure them." Mrs. Thompson beamed. "You're very welcome. Now, I'll leave you to it. I have a feeling tonight is going to be magical." As she walked away, Holly turned to Nick, her heart swelling with emotion. "This is amazing. I can't believe we've come this far. Nick smiled, his eyes soft with affection. We've made a great team. I couldn't have done it without you. Holly felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in a long time. Nick, I have something to tell you. Nick looked at her, his expression curious. What is it, Holly? She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about making new memories. And I realized that I want that. I want to embrace the spirit of Christmas, to let go of the past and create something beautiful. Nick's eyes softened, and he reached out to take her hand. Holly, I'm so glad to hear that. You deserve to be happy, to enjoy the magic of the season. Holly smiled, feeling a sense of relief and joy. Thank you, Nick. You've helped me see that. They stood there for a moment, their hands clasped, the warmth of their connection enveloping them. Then Nick spoke, his voice filled with a gentle resolve. I have something I want to share with you too. Holly looked at him, her heart pounding. What is it? Nick took a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers with a sincerity that took her breath away. I've made a wish every Christmas for as long as I can remember. A wish for someone special to share my love for the holiday, to build new memories with. This year, my wish came true. Holly's eyes filled with tears as she realized the depth of his words. Nick! He smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. I know it's sudden, and maybe it's crazy, but I've fallen for you, Holly. You've brought so much joy into my life, and I can't imagine spending Christmas without you. Holly felt a rush of emotion, a mix of joy and love that overwhelmed her. Nick, I feel the same way. You've shown me the true magic of Christmas, and I can't imagine my life without you. Nick's smile widened, and he pulled her into a gentle embrace. Then let's make this Christmas one to remember. Together. Holly nodded, her heart full. Together. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the town hall around them filled with the soft glow of the holiday lights, Holly knew that this was the start of something beautiful. She had found not only the spirit of Christmas, but also the love she had been searching for. Chapter 6, Once Upon a December. The day of the Evergreen Christmas Gala dawned crisp and clear, with a fresh layer of snow blanketing the town. Holly arrived at the town hall early, her breath visible in the frosty morning air. The hall was quiet and serene, a stark contrast to the hustle and bustle it had seen in the days leading up to the event. Holly took a moment to appreciate the beauty of the decorations, the twinkling lights, and the festive atmosphere they had created. Nick arrived soon after, carrying a thermos of hot cocoa. Morning, Holly, he said with a warm smile. Thought you might need this. Holly accepted the thermos gratefully. You read my mind. Thank you, Nick. They sat together, sipping hot cocoa and enjoying the quiet before the storm. Holly felt a sense of peace and contentment she hadn't felt in years. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, but they had brought her closer to Nick and had rekindled her love for Christmas. As the volunteers started to arrive, the hall slowly came to life. Holly and Nick supervised the final preparations, ensuring everything was perfect for the evening's gala. The townspeople buzzed with excitement, their anticipation palpable. By late afternoon, the town hall was transformed into a breathtaking winter wonderland. The stage was set, the tables were adorned with beautiful centerpieces, and the entire hall glowed with the warm, inviting light of countless fairy lights and lanterns. Holly couldn't help but feel a swell of pride and accomplishment. Looks like everything is ready, Nick said, coming up beside her. You've done an amazing job, Holly. Holly smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. We did it together, Nick. I couldn't have done it without you. Nick's eyes softened, and he took her hand in his. Are you ready for the big night? More than ready, Holly replied, squeezing his hand. As the evening approached, guests began to arrive, filling the hall with laughter and festive cheer. Holly watched as families, friends, and couples mingled, their faces alight with joy. She felt a warmth in her heart, knowing she had played a part in creating this magical night. The gala began with a welcome speech from Mrs. Thompson, who praised the hard work of the volunteers and thanked Holly and Nick for their dedication. As she spoke, Holly felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had helped bring the community together in such a meaningful way. After the speeches, the entertainment began. Local musicians played festive tunes, children performed a charming nativity play, and a choir filled the hall with beautiful carols. Holly watched from the sidelines, her heart full as she took in the sights and sounds of the evening. As the night went on, Holly found herself dancing with Nick under the twinkling lights. The soft strains of a waltz filled the air, and Holly felt as if they were the only two people in the world. "This is perfect," she whispered, resting her head on Nick's shoulder. "It really is," Nick agreed, holding her close. "I'm so glad you're here, Holly." Holly looked up at him, her eyes shining with emotion. "I'm glad too, Nick. You've made this Christmas one I'll never forget." Nick smiled, his eyes filled with love. "Holly, I have something for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, wrapped box. Holly took it, her heart pounding with anticipation. She carefully unwrapped it to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a snowflake pendant. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you, Nick." Nick took the necklace and fastened it around her neck. "I wanted you to have something to remember this Christmas by. And to remind you of how special you are." Holly felt tears welling up in her eyes. "You've made this Christmas unforgettable, Nick." "Thank you." They continued to dance, the world around them fading away as they lost themselves in each other. Holly felt a sense of peace and happiness she hadn't known in years, and she knew it was all because of Nick. As the evening drew to a close, the guests began to leave, their hearts full of holiday cheer. Holly and Nick stood by the entrance, bidding everyone good night and receiving countless thanks and compliments for their hard work. When the hall was finally empty, Holly and Nick stood together in the quiet, their hands intertwined. The soft glow of the lights and the gentle hum of the music created a perfect, intimate moment. "Thank you for everything, Nick," Holly said softly. "You've made this Christmas truly special." Nick smiled, his eyes filled with love. "I couldn't have done it without you, Holly. You've brought so much joy into my life." Holly leaned in and kissed him, a gentle, tender kiss that spoke volumes. As they pulled away, she looked into his eyes, feeling a sense of certainty and love she had never known before. "Merry Christmas, Nick," she whispered. "Merry Christmas, Holly," he replied, pulling her into a warm embrace. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Holly knew that this was just the beginning of their story. They had found each other in the most unexpected way, and together, they had created a Christmas to remember. And as they looked forward to the future, they knew that every December would be filled with love, joy, and the magic of the holiday season.